What's up guys, this is Valentina with Bigger Creations, and today I'm excited to finally share with you a great conversation I had with my friend Sean Hurwitz. If you're not familiar with who he has been the guitarist for Smash Mouth, and Enrique Iglesias, and he still continues to work in the industry today as a guitarist and a producer and performing all over the world. Enough to actually get a message from Sean about a year ago. We started talking a few months ago on Instagram. I told you guys about our relationship and told you we were gonna have a conversation and asked you guys to send in any questions you might have, and most of them were around industry and mixing guitars. So I'm excited to share how our conversation went, and let me just give him a quick call. Sean, thanks for taking the time to meet with me. I know we've been talking for like a really long time, I think a little over a year, and just kind of going back and forth, experimenting with some things. And I'm glad that we now have you on the channel and have a chance to get to know you a little bit and, you know, ask some awesome questions about everything, the industry and, you know, mixing guitars, which I think is something that people tend to overcomplicate. So glad to have you.
Well, thanks for having me. Let's see, born in Israel, decided in my 20s that I was going to move to America to be a rock star. To try my best to be a rock star. I came to America, worked at Guitar Center for a few years and learned some really important lessons about writing and publishing, about mingling and being out there and promoting yourself, and that's it. And then I left after a few years. I worked with a bunch of different artists. I've probably played with close to, if not over 100 different artists in Los Angeles. Yeah, it's been quite the ride. The biggest ones that I played with Anna Nalick, which I don't know if anyone remembers her or knows her. She was like in the 90s. She was pretty big, amazing singer and songwriter. But then in 2011, I got to join Smash Mouth, that people may remember, people may know from Shrek, the song All-Star, Believer, Walking on the Sun. And then I also, in 2015, I joined Enrique Iglesias and toured with him for a few years. And then I came, a few years ago, I left Enrique, went back to Smash Mouth and having a blast playing rock and roll again. And it's been really fun. Corona has really screwed up the live industry and the live entertainment industry, but that's where this comes into play. The studios, the recordings, the production, licensing and sync world, where you get things placed into TV and film. And so that's another aspect of stuff that I do.
That's awesome. You know, something that just, I'm sure everyone's asking themselves right now, like, how did you manage to, like, you know, be into rock and roll and then play for someone like Enrique Iglesias, like such different genres? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, first of all, my friend Randy Cook, the drummer at the time, brought me in 2011. And then I made friends with Eddie Caipo, the sound engineer, which still to this day works with Enrique Iglesias as the monitor engineer. The best monitor engineer I've ever worked with, and a dear friend. I actually just got off the phone with him half an hour ago, and when there was an opening for the Enrique gig, he said, "Would you like me to put your name in?" I said yes. I auditioned, got the gig, and spent the next 4 years touring the world with Enrique. So when it comes down to it, it really is about relationships, and the fact is, it's not that different, you know? It's like, it wasn't from like a rock gig to a jazz gig. That I would be like, maybe not, I don't know, but this was a lot easier than that.
Yeah, totally, I can imagine. I think also just like anything in the pop realm is like, it's pop, right? So
yeah, it's pop.
Yeah, totally.
Exactly.
Kind of already alluded to some of these things, but like, what was one of your favorite things about touring? Or what is one of your favorite things? Because you still do gigs all the time now, right? So.
Yeah. Well, one of my favorite things, the favorite thing for me about touring is meeting fans and meeting people all around the world. That fascinates me. I love meeting random people from all over the world that love the music enough to come here and sing along with us. And to me, that's fascinating, and it's one of my favorite things to do.
I think in some ways also just like it's kind of one of the biggest rewarding factors of being a musician or an artist is seeing that connection with other people. You know, when they connect with the music you're making, it's kind of the same thing. It's an extension. It's like now you have a face to your audience, right? So that's super cool.
Yeah. And they have a face to me. You know, most people, I'll walk around sometimes before the show. No one knows who I am. I'm dressed rock star. I have possibly a laminate hanging from my belt. But so they may be like, is that someone that we should know? But they don't know who I am. I just walk around. No one talks to me. But then when I get up on stage, suddenly they're just like, oh, that's the guy that was walking around here a minute ago. That's so cool. And it's just really cool. It's a cool feeling.
That's awesome. So I guess you alluded to this a little bit, but you know, you said you've played with so many artists and you moved to LA and you just started like making connections. What eventually led you to like your big break, right? Was Smash Mouth, is that what you would consider your big break, or did that happen a little bit before?
I think Smash Mouth was my big break. I think Smash Mouth took me to an international level, meaning, yes, I come from Israel to America, sort of international, but I wasn't touring internationally. And I did a lot of tours within the US with a lot of indie artists, but this was my first, like, okay, here's a ticket to Iraq and Kuwait. You have an hour and a half set to learn. Go get them. And then I was performing for the troops at 7 different bases in Iraq and Kuwait in 2011, and that was just, you know. So that was my big break.
So obviously you have how many years of experience in the industry? Over 20?
So that's a good question. I would say that I started music when I was 13, kind of got out of it and into production and sound engineering. I was actually a live sound engineer for years and a stage tech for years in Israel. And then I wouldn't say when I was 20 or 21, I got back into music. I'm 41 now, so I've been doing it since I was 13, but I've been doing it straight for the last 20 years. Even while I was in Guitar Center, the whole reason why I was at Guitar Center was, to make money, to buy gear for very cheap, for employee costs, and to meet and connect and let everyone know, hey, my name is Sean Hurwitz. I just got here. I'd love to audition for you, rehearse. I'm ready to pay my dues. I'm not expecting you to just take me, but let me earn my stripes, so to speak. And that's what I use Guitar Center for.
That's awesome. And that leads in perfectly to my next question, which is like what kind of industry, like for someone who wants to make it in the industry, whether it's as a musician or as an artist or as a producer or just any sort of role within the music industry, what's some advice that you would give?
There are a few things. That really is a very, very good question. I could probably name them all on one hand. I would say be a professional. And what I mean is not be able to shred every Van Halen solo. I mean be a professional. Be able to play 2 chords without... If your job is to play 2 chords for the whole song for the next 3 minutes, just play those 2 chords. That is your job. Do it professionally. Do it well. Just because you know how to shred like Van Halen doesn't mean you should be shredding in a song that is just 2 arpeggios back and forth. So be a professional and do your job. Show up on time, but that's just still under being a professional. Show up on time. Show up early, in fact. If I have a rehearsal at 2 o'clock, I'm there at 1:30. When people walk into the studio, I'm already ready to go. I've already sound checked. Everything's ready to go. So be the pro as best as you can. Now, what else? Add value goes right with that, whether it's on a friend basis, just adding value to people's friendship with you, or adding value by being like when I go to when I go to a rehearsal, I can absolutely just be the guitarist. But if there's something going on with the tracks and they need help, yeah, let's do it. Let me help. If there's no sound engineer in the room and it's a small, tiny little dodgy place and the singer, there's no one to help us and they need some vocals in the monitor, well, I know how to do that. So that's adding value, right? So be a professional, add value, make friends. And when I say make friends, I've said this a lot in my videos. I'm not saying go and make friends for the purpose of getting X, Y, and Z. I'm saying make friends so you can add value to their lives. Meaning, even if someone's rich or someone's poor or famous or not famous, there's always something you could help them with. Maybe it's love. Maybe it's advice on health. Maybe it's advice on fitness. Maybe there's always something you can do. So on a friend note, without expecting anything in return, give and just try to add value to people. And I think that's more or less it. I mean, be a professional, add value, make friends, make relationships. You and I met online, and here we are, hopefully adding value to people, to people's lives as musicians or whatever, adding to their dream, and like follow up with people and really create relationships. I think that's one of the most important things.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of experience in the industry, but I can tell you just in general, those 3 pieces of advice just work perfect for life in general, right? Like you build relationships, you show up, you do what you committed to do, and then you help whenever you can. And I think those things by themselves bring the rewards that people are looking for anyway.
Yes, agreed.
Awesome. Well, cool. I wanted to pivot a little bit. As you know, we asked my Instagram audience what kind of questions they might have about mixing guitars specifically, but just in general, also some production tips. So I guess let's kick it off with the most common question we got was very open-ended of like, how do you make guitars sound good? And I think, maybe that changes based off of whether you're recording acoustically, like through a mic or like plugging in an electric guitar. But I think the principles are probably all the same. So if you want to just like tell us a little bit about, in general, what are some rules of thumb to allow your guitars to sound good?
Yeah, so you make a very good point. It is, it depends what you're recording for. And as a producer, I'm thinking, whenever I'm recording a guitar, be it electric or acoustic, nylon string, steel string, I'm looking at a mandolin and a ukulele, whatever is, I need to know what kind of sound I'm looking for. Am I looking for something intimate? Am I looking for something that's more spacey? And I'll figure out how many guitars do I want to record, how many guitars do I want to double, which parts and voicings. But yes, I feel like miking techniques for acoustic, I lean towards XY patterns. Are you familiar with XY?
Yeah.
And hopefully your viewers are as well, your subs are. So XY and sometimes mid-side. I have done that in the past. It's not one I usually go for the XY. I really, really love that stereo field. And I'll put it right up to the guitar. So it's close, it's intimate, but at the same time, it's nice and wide, like you can feel the stereo feel. Take out like a few go-to things is obviously play a good guitar and use good microphones. When I say good microphones, when I started the XY, I bought some crappy microphones at Guitar Center, and right away I was like, the amount of noise to signal ratio, like there's too much noise in these microphones. And then I went and bought these suckers, 81s, which I love. There are other pencil microphones that you can, let me just put this away. There are other pencil microphones that you can buy. Just get some good microphones. Get a good guitar so you have good material to work with. And then once you record, use some EQ. Not necessarily before. I personally would use a little EQ after the fact. Just record it flat and then use a little EQ to take out sometimes the bass is very heavy, and sometimes if it's just a guitar and vocals, that can be a beautiful thing. But if you're kind of putting guitars into a mix, you don't need all that bass. It's just muddying the waters. Take that out. Maybe give it some sparkle with some other stuff. Compression is very important. I think those are the few things. Like, have a great guitar, have some good microphones with some good microphone techniques. For me, it's X, Y, and mid-side. And use some EQ and use some compression after the fact.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's super helpful. And to your point, I've seen a ton of mixes that I've received. I mean, I'm by no means like a professional mixer at all, but I've seen a lot of mixes where it's like they kept all of the bass frequencies from the guitar, and it's just making everything like super messy. And just literally just taking out some of those lower frequencies gives the guitar the space it needs. It's insane.
Yeah, because one of the things is the guitar sounds nice and full when you're listening to it soloed, but in the context of a full mix, of the full picture, it doesn't need it doesn't need to occupy that space of frequencies.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as far as electric guitar, to be honest, I don't. You can probably see this, or maybe you can see this with the GoPro. My Kemper here, my Kemper Profiler, that's mainly what I use. It does the job great for me. I've got some Wagners, some Fenders, amps. I used to have other ones as well, but really this thing is great.
That's awesome. And then how do you feel about plugging in acoustic electric guitars for recording? Would you say that's like a last option as far as like the sound, or?
No, it's just about what you're going for. Like, all the sounds and all the techniques and everything, it depends on what you're going for. There are songs out there today that are number one, or not anything I can think of at the second, but I've heard like top 10 songs out there that I can tell as a professional, oh yeah, that guitar is totally just plugged in direct to the board. But see, that's a specific sound. So if that's the sound you're going for, by all means do it. If you want to hear more of the room, if you want to get a like, you know what? If you haven't, to the subs, if you haven't done it yet, experiment. That's the most important thing. Experiment with XY, experiment with mid-side, experiment with plugging in directly, experiment with some microphones, experiment with them close and them far, and see how they sound. Some songs are going to be great plugged in. Some songs are going to be great with a few mics far away. So it really changes based on what you need it to sound like. I don't think there's anything wrong with plugging in. I usually don't just plug in. I usually will go through a Kemper or electrics, or amplifiers. And for acoustic, whether it's steel string or nylon string, I will usually use microphones.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's super helpful. I think just in general, any artistic type of thing, whether it's like music or like cameras or anything, it's just understanding what the tools do for you so that you can accomplish what you want to accomplish. And yeah, it's just understanding that. So I love that you pointed that out.
Yeah, experimentation is key. I recently got endorsed with Isotope, and they send me some stuff. I told them what I wanted. They send me some more. And now I have to spend hours playing around with these amazing tools to really learn how to use them in the best way. I found a few that I love. I found a few that I'm just like, okay. But for the most part, I'm going to have to experiment a lot in order to make them work the best way they can.
Yeah, totally. And then, make them fit for the different types of projects that you have, right? In some cases, you're going to want something that's super spacey and airy that you could feel the room that the guitar was in. And in others, it's just going to be another instrument in the line, right? So,
exactly.
Yeah. Awesome. So what are some of the VSTs you would recommend?
So VSTs, I'll mention a few that I use. Of course, as long as you experiment and play around with whatever you got and learn how to use it, any EQs and compressors will work. Some will work better, some will work not as well. But the key note here is that if you have an okay compressor, but you know how to use it amazing, that may sound better than an incredibly expensive compressor that you don't know how to use. So you really have to, like you said earlier, and like I said, you really have to experiment and learn how to use what you've got. That being said, for EQs, I like to use the Fab Filter Simplon. It's just a simple filter that I love to use on all those guitars. It's really easy to use, and I love it. But I use the isotope, the exciter and the EQs, depending on if I'm trying to, and the compressors, depending on if I'm trying to, well, I'm either trying to use an EQ to notch out or raise certain frequencies, or sometimes I'll use an exciter, like the ozone exciter, to boost it with harmonics. Rather than raise a frequency, I'm boosting the harmonics in that frequency. And that works as sort of an EQ and a compressor, because I'm also adding some drive to it, which in a way is a compression. I also love the Synoxis SV315, one of my favorite compressors. And I also use I want to say it's the UAD stuff. It's the Studer Alpha A800, Alpha 800. That's another favorite of mine, another go-to. Those are the ones that I would usually use.
That's awesome. I love that what you just outlined are just like the basics, right? Like EQ, compression, and like some harmonics or saturation. I think people think that they need to have like this huge strip of effects and plugins to make things sound good. It's really just understanding how to use those basic tools the right way.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I will usually, my chain, well, let's say I have two acoustic guitars left and right to kind of beautiful stereo kind of feel, just doubling each other. I will probably have on each one of them, I will have a Simplon to take out whatever frequencies I don't want. Then possibly an EQ, but more likely a compressor, just a basic compressor, just to limit them a little, just to compress them a little, nothing harsh. Then if I need to shape them, some EQs, then they're going to go to a group. And on a group, I will have, if I need, some added EQ, but I may just use the ozone exciter for that to shape the harmonics. And probably the A800, the UAD tape machine. And that's usually it for the guitars. I'm not going to go crazy. Like, I just need them to sit where they need to sit within the mix as far as levels and as far as frequencies. And by the way, you know this, but just to point out for people, I got a bunch of guitars here and gear. And what DAW do you use for this? I mean, I use Cubase. That's just what I grew up with. Many people use Ableton, Pro Tools, Logic. If you're just getting into it, just use whatever comes naturally to you. These are all the same. When you get into mixing, some of them can change different things depending on CPU usage, depending on, like, you ask different people, they'll tell you different things. But the fact is, there's amazing stuff out there that's been done on Pro Tools, that's been done on Logic, that's been done on Sound One, Cubase, Ableton. They're all the same thing. The basic operation is all the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just like different brands of tools, really, in general.
Yep.
And
exactly.
Coming back to like what I feel has become kind of the theme, it's just like understanding key principles and then knowing how they work and using those to accomplish what you want. It's kind of the same thing. I think the DAW question is always like, oh, FL Studio Gang or like Logic Gang. It's like, at the end of the day, it's just a user interface that accomplishes the same thing, for everyone. You just got to see what you're comfortable with and learn how to use it. Whatever you have, be a pro at it, right? Like, just understand how it works so you can accomplish what you want. So it's awesome. So I think that gets us through like all the guitar specific questions. I guess, honestly, it's been like, you're obviously a huge wealth of knowledge just with how many years of industry experience, and really appreciate you sharing this type of information. I think it's one of those things that just people thirst for, because not everyone is in LA. Not everyone is rubbing elbows with people that have rubbed elbows with bigger people and that know so-and-so. And so it's just great to have some sort of connection and hear about your experiences in the industry. Which leads me to your YouTube channel. I love that you've started a YouTube channel where you can share some of this information with everyone. Can you tell us a little bit about what to expect on your channel and where you're going with that?
Yeah. So I've been very fortunate. I've had my music in hundreds of TV shows and films around the world. I still do. That's part of my business. I've toured the world with these amazing artists. And I'm also 41. I'm not getting any younger. And I feel like there's a whole nother generation or two by now that, or maybe three, that could use some guidance. So I really want to help younger musicians make the right choices if they choose to make this their career, their business. There's a way to approach it. That's what my YouTube is about. I'm trying to help them out. Of course, everything there is free, and it helps me if people subscribe and like and comment. But really, it's there for them. It's there to help them make the right choices. And and on that note, if anyone ever wants to contact me, I was just talking to a guitarist from Italy 2 hours ago that hit me up on Instagram, and he was like, "Hey, can I chat with you and ask you some questions?" I was like, "Let's make it happen," So if any of you are listening and have some questions as a follow-up to this amazing video, then please feel free to hit me up.
You mentioned how your beginnings were kind of like in the US, were working at Guitar Center. And obviously, you meet all sorts of different people that in some way care about music because they're coming into a music store. But
Right.
I can bet that there are a lot of people that watch this channel that are probably in that same situation, or just working at a local store. What kind of advice do you give them? I mean, you talked a little bit about, making sure that you tell people who you are, but what's the next step from there? Like, how did you get through? I'm sure you have discouraging moments of oh man, this isn't going anywhere.
Of course, but look, what? I was just talking about this with another Guitar Center employee that I haven't seen in like 15 years, and we just got together for lunch. When you're in a store like that, you have the opportunities to use that scenario, that job, as a vessel to get you to the next step or next few steps in your career. The opportunities are there. Now, whether you use them or not is up to you. How would you use them? Again, make acquaintances, make connections. Don't just be hey, do you need help with that? Oh, okay, never mind. No, actually show interest in what other people are doing, not just for the sake of making sales, but also because you may find out something really cool about that person. I've made friends for life like that. But again, if you're in that position, just get into everything and anything. That would be my biggest piece of advice, is throw yourself into the moment, throw yourself into the scenario, and just do everything that is possible. Audition for everything. Listen, audition for everything. Let everyone know you're looking. Do sessions, sometimes for free, sometimes for $20 for the session, whatever. Pay your dues, and don't say no to anything at that point in your life. Later on, it changes, but at that point in your life, say yes to everything. I can tell you, there are auditions that I went to when I was in Guitar Center that I sucked. I was way not ready for that kind of audition. And then there were auditions that I went to and I was like, ugh, I do not want to play with this band because they're just beneath me. They don't know how to play. And I'm happy that I came to audition because now I feel a little better about my playing. But yeah, that exists. And you, as a person that's working in that position, should be auditioning for all of it and saying yes to everything.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for your time. I think this was awesome. Hopefully we can collaborate again in the future, and I'm sure our followers are going to be, looking at your YouTube channel too, and learning some more from your industry knowledge. So
thank you so much for having me. And, if anyone has follow-up questions, I'm sure I'll be checking out the comments of this video. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask me or let you know. And we can do another one of these about other questions.
Yeah, totally. Awesome. All right. Thank you.